Countries across the world are worrying about the threat that AI poses to their economies. But for one country in particular, that threat is so great, it's almost existential. India was supposed to have the future on its side. It has the world's largest population, a massive young workforce, English-speaking graduates, huge IT companies, and cities that became famous for doing office work for the rest of the world. The problem? Well, AI is coming first for precisely that kind of work. For years, the Indian growth story has leaned heavily on something called the demographic dividend. The idea here is that when a country has loads of working-age people, it can grow faster, earn more, consume more, and invest more. But all of that only holds true if those people actually get productive jobs. Consider India's giant tech sector. The industry has millions of workers, while NASSCOM projects it will reach over $315 billion in revenue for 2026. It continues to add jobs, but the whole model focuses on selling human talent at scale. Coding, support, testing, business processing, and software services for foreign clients. And with AI headlines dropping left, right, and center, the market is already starting to see signs of stress. Indian IT shares recently hit their lowest level in 3 years after fresh AI developments revived fears that traditional IT services would lose demand. Stocks of leading companies like TCS and Infosys continue to get hit hard. And to be fair, we're not looking at irrational fear about humanoid robots taking over factories. The concern is India's outsourcing industry, the work that made cities like Bengaluru, Hyderabad, Pune, and Chennai part of the global corporate machine. The first serious sign of trouble came from TCS, or Tata Consulting Services, which has been one of India's great private sector employers. So, when it announced record job cuts back in July 2025, it signaled to the global market that staff cuts in India's flagship services sector were now on the table. TCS confirmed a 2% workforce reduction for 2026, affecting more than 12,000 people, and the company mentioned AI adoption, new markets, skill gaps, and a tougher demand outlook. In essence, it was the whole anxiety around Indian IT compressed into a single headline. The specific jobs AI is impacting are at the center of this anxiety. AI coding agents can now handle software tasks, fix bugs, and work across multiple engineering jobs at once. In particular, that puts pressure on entry-level coding and maintenance work that used to absorb armies of fresh graduates. Call centers are already exposed. Now, while there are still some issues with implementation, AI chatbots are already replacing some routine customer service work in India, and this is especially true where the determined task is repetitive. Answer the query, process the request, summarize the issue, and move on. The danger here is just as much social as it is economic. These jobs were considered proof that a degree, English, and a bit of coding skills could move a family upward. And as the ladder gets narrower, anger over job creation is only going to become a bigger political issue than it already is. Now, to be clear, India is not yet seeing the US-style AI layoffs across the board. TCS's leadership has pushed back on the idea that AI directly translates into mass layoffs, arguing instead that the industry can use AI as a productivity tool, and there is a strong argument here. But the threat doesn't have to be instant mass unemployment. South Asia already struggles to create enough jobs for its growing working-age population. If AI simply reduces hiring intensity in the best white-collar sectors, that demographic dividend becomes much harder to cash in. So the troubling truth for India is not that every Indian IT job will disappear overnight. The issue is that the jobs India was counting on may become much scarcer, more selective, and most importantly, less labor-intensive, just as millions of young people need somewhere to go. Now, as we dove into our research on this, it quickly became clear that there are a ton of moving parts to this story, and it will require close monitoring as things develop. But to stay on top of it, all you need to do is sign up for the Finance Bureau newsletter. It's absolutely free, and we break down the key moves across markets, macro, politics, and more, so you don't miss what really matters. All you need to do is click the link in the description or scan this QR code on the right of your screen. And now, back to the video. Okay, to get a better picture of the issues India's economy faces, it's important to consider how it got to where it is today. In most successful development stories, economies move through a fairly predictable process. First, workers leave farms for factories where productivity and wages rise. Then, as the country gets richer, more people move into higher value services. India's path looked very different. It jumped much more quickly into services, while agriculture continues to employ a huge share of the workforce, despite contributing a much smaller share of GDP. According to the latest report on these figures from Bloom, services were 54% of GDP and made up 31% of the labor force. At the same time, agriculture was only 15% of GDP, but 46% of the labor force, essentially half of the workers. Most miracle economies did not start with call centers and software campuses. They used factories to pull workers out of agriculture, build export industries, and train people inside the firms. India is trying to reach high income status without having followed that typical path. Services now dominate India's economy. The Indian Government Economic Survey says the services share of GDP just keeps on rising, helped by modern digitally delivered services. And that sounds great, but services won't absorb workers the way mass manufacturing once did. And this shortcut looked like a clever move initially. India had English-speaking graduates, low labor costs, and Western companies desperate to cut back office expenses. Instead of building the next Shenzhen, India decided to build the world's software support desk. And to be clear, that was a serious accomplishment. Indian IT created huge service exports, middle-class jobs, and serious global credibility. The problem is that an economy can't rely forever on a labor cost advantage when software starts doing more of the labor. AI hits this shortcut directly. The International Labour Organization, or ILO, has found that AI is more likely to affect clerical and office tasks than many physical jobs. So, India's supposedly advanced services route may be more exposed than the factory route it never fully built. Now, to be clear, a factory worker is not immune to automation, of course, but in many developing countries, manufacturing still gives large numbers of people practical ways into regular work. India is still trying to make that manufacturing push, while AI is currently moving into white-collar services. And India also has a deep education, should we say, mismatch. The ILO's India Employment Report showed that youth unemployment, education, and skills continue to be central challenges, and this confirms that having a degree does not guarantee the economy has a decent job that's sitting there waiting for you. And this is why unemployed graduates are such a sensitive political issue. India needs millions of new jobs every year, but there's a widening jobs gap for young graduates. Young people face joblessness despite doing everything right. And for middle-class families, that disappointment is particularly bitter. A child gets coached, pushed through exams, sent to engineering school, and they're told that the office job is the ultimate prize. And then the first rung of the ladder gets automated or reserved for a better AI candidate. Unemployment and job creation were already two of India's biggest economic worries before this AI wave fully materialized. One Reuters poll of economists showed that it was the main challenge for the government, despite the fact that India remained one of the world's fastest-growing major economies. And services also don't solve the absorption problem evenly. Now, don't get us wrong, services matter enormously for jobs, but the sector is uneven across states and subsectors. So, a high-end tech job in Bengaluru is not the same as informal service work elsewhere. And that takes us back to the issue of India's manufacturing sector. India needs more manufacturing, better training, stronger basic education, and more regular employment. AI didn't create those problems, but it will make the services sector's shortcut look much less safe. So the main vulnerability for India's economy is there for everyone to see in the services export machine. Indian IT companies are still important and globally relevant, but investors are repricing weak demand and slower client spending. Soon, more firms will ask how many humans each contract really needs. India's services export sector was established on a simple deal. Western companies saved money and Indian firms supplied skilled human labor at enormous scale. And now, firms like TCS are telling employees to use AI even if it cannibalizes revenue because clients want work done even faster and even cheaper. For decades, the idea was basically human hours. You needed a system maintained, a process handled, a code base tested, or a customer support queue cleared. So, an Indian services firm supplied the people. AI starts breaking that link between work delivered and people required. And that threatens the old labor arbitrage model. The competitor is no longer just a more expensive American worker versus a cheaper Indian worker. It's a human-heavy delivery team versus software that can draft, check, summarize, test, and write code all without sleeping. English was a huge part of that advantage. India offered cheaper workers who could speak to American and many European clients. But as real-time AI translation improves, English language skills become far less of an advantage. Consider the customer support example we just mentioned earlier. AI chatbots in India are already handling routine queries that used to go to humans. A human agent may still be needed for tricky cases, but the business case for large support teams becomes much weaker. The optimistic view is that AI will change the work rather than kill the work. Some outsourcing executives argue that companies will still need Indian firms to deploy, manage, and improve AI systems. And that may be true, but headcount requirements still undoubtedly change nonetheless. And crucially, that changes the pricing model. If clients are paying for outcomes instead of bodies, then a vendor does not get rewarded for putting 500 people on a project. It only gets rewarded for finishing the job with as few human hours as possible. And coding faces the same issue. Products like OpenAI's Codex app let users manage multiple AI coding agents and automate software tasks. And that means one developer can do more and junior coding work becomes less protected. And importantly, for today's story, this creates a nasty split inside India's tech workforce. The best engineers become more powerful because AI lets them build faster and operate in smaller teams. At the top, AI is a force multiplier. For elite or talented engineers, that results in more leverage and independence, along with more startup potential. And this is largely why some claim the middle class of tech is vanishing. Practically, AI can also look a lot like wage pressure. Recent layoffs could signal a wider shake-up in the outsourcing sector, with testing, infrastructure management, and mid-career roles being especially vulnerable. And this split could even worsen brain drain. If India's best AI engineers think the biggest rewards are still abroad, the country loses more of the people it needs to move from services delivery into product creation. Student migration shows this rather clearly. OECD analysis says Indian enrollments have increased across major destination countries, even as global student flows shift. For ambitious young Indians, foreign education is still seen as a prime route to higher wages and stronger networks. But it's important to consider that migration is getting more complicated. US H-1B visa changes have already shaken Indian IT firms and forced companies to rethink how they deploy skilled workers into their biggest market. And that could also slow some of the brain drain, but it also adds stress to the services model. Of course, that model can survive if it employs fewer people. As a former RBI governor pointed out, AI can disrupt India's services sector without necessarily derailing it. And that sounds reassuring, but survival is a pretty low bar for a sector India relies so heavily on. To be clear though, survival can look pretty impressive. India's Global Capability Centers, or GCCs, are booming, with revenues projected near $100 billion and employment above 2 million people. And these are more than back offices. They're increasingly handling everything from software to finance to analytics and R&D. And GCCs are different from the old outsourcing model. Instead of hiring TCS or Infosys to do work externally, multinationals build their own Indian teams. And that can mean better jobs for top workers, but it also means less demand for traditional services firms. India's Karnataka state wants even more of this. The state has planned incentives to double global centers to 1,000 by 2029 and create hundreds of thousands of jobs. But for mass employment, GCCs, they're not the full answer. They may hire very good engineers, data scientists, product managers, and finance specialists. But they can't absorb the broad base of average graduates who once expected a conventional IT services job. India has deep engineering ability, a huge founder ambition, and a massive domestic market. The problem is that AI rewards a narrower cohort of that talent, while leaving many trained workers stuck below the new skill threshold. Nevertheless, India is also attracting enormous AI infrastructure investment. In October 2025, Google announced plans for a $15 billion AI hub in India, including data centers, energy infrastructure, and subsea connectivity. So, India is firmly part of the global AI build-out. And as AI is built out and models improve, the domestic upside is India's digital public infrastructure. Public platforms such as UPI for payments or ONDC for e-commerce give builders a platform to create services for Indian consumers and small businesses at huge scale. And that gives India a significant home market advantage. UPI dominates Indian digital payments and has become central to everyday commerce, from street vendors to online platforms. ONDC is another initiative establishing public digital infrastructure but with commerce in focus. The idea is to make e-commerce more open and interoperable, so smaller sellers are not locked out by a few giant platforms. As AI agents become payment-enabled shopping assistants, India already has a strong payment infrastructure ready to go. Language is also part of this domestic opportunity. Although English skills will matter less globally, AI translation could help Indian companies reach Indians outside the English-speaking tech economy, starting with Hindi and other major Indian languages. And this is already being built into public digital services. The Indian government has made it clear that it wants India in the AI race. The India AI Mission is an initiative focused on building compute access, improving data sets, supporting startups, and pushing AI into public internet use cases. But as we've seen, infrastructure and employment do not necessarily move together in this new era. India AI has started expanding affordable GPU access for both startups and academia. And that's significant because compute access is one of the big barriers between having the necessary human talent and actually being able to build serious AI products. But again, a richer digital economy does not necessarily provide jobs for the national workforce. AI could help India build amazing domestic products, better public services, and stronger startups, while still reducing the number of humans required in the old global services machine. Now, despite all the concerns that we've raised in this video, the worst-case scenarios still need caution and a healthy dash of skepticism. AI executives have every incentive to make AI sound world-changing to an unimaginable degree. Whether it's Anthropic's Dario Amodi or OpenAI's Sam Altman, they purposefully make it sound like a white-collar Armageddon is imminent. It's also clear that companies, in the US particularly, are finding AI useful as a corporate excuse. There's a problem separating real AI-driven layoffs from AI washing, where executives say automation is behind layoffs, even though weak demand, over-hiring, or margin pressure are far bigger factors. Now, we're not saying every AI layoff story is fake, but the technology can both be impactful and overused as a clean explanation for messy business decisions. Recent analysis from Goldman Sachs says AI has been a modest net drag on US employment so far, but also presented the possibility that AI can boost output and create demand in other areas. The ILO's view is similar. Its work on generative AI says many jobs are more likely to be augmented than fully automated, although exposure is still serious for clerical and routine office work. So the risk to India's current structure is not trivial. Adoption is also far from straightforward. Companies have legacy systems, bad data, compliance issues, security worries, hallucination risks, and customers who still want accountability. AI is powerful, but enterprise workflows are not clean little demo videos. For India, this is reassuring. However, the question remains whether future growth, once AI efficiency and adoption improves, needs as many ordinary workers as past growth once did. So the less dramatic risk is still pretty nasty. A graduate may not lose a job to AI because they may never get the job in the first place. If companies keep existing workers but slow campus hiring and demand AI skills from day one, the labor market tightens for people trying to enter it. So the policy response obviously can't just be to tell people to learn AI and hope for the best. India needs better school education, stronger vocational training, more labor-intensive manufacturing where possible, and domestic product companies that serve Indian problems, not just Western back offices. It also needs to spread AI gains beyond the elites, but that's hardly a problem unique to India. Technology creates both fast-growing and fast-declining roles. The challenge is making sure the new roles are not restricted to a tiny cohort of very skilled workers. So on balance, it's probably fair to say that AI does not spell Armageddon for India's economy, at least in the immediate term. But it does threaten the model India has been betting on for decades. Even if the AI hype is exaggerated, AI will lower the need for human output. India can adjust, but AI is only going to improve from here, and the window to adapt will not stay open forever. The countries that move fastest will be able to shape the next era of work, but the ones that hesitate risk being shaped by it. Well, that's all we have time for today, but what do you think? Is India's economy facing a crisis at the hands of AI? Or is all of this just hype? Feel free to get highly opinionated in the comments down below. And while India tackles its issues, if you want to see how the UK is trying to get out of its own economic slump, then you can watch our video on that right over here. That's all from me today though. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Nick, signing off.